So what I'm gonna do right here now is that I'm gonna give you an example on something I was betting on yesterday, and the score was like 8-0. It was like the Marlins and the Rangers. I bet on several games, and sometimes my mind gets conflicted, but I'm pretty sure it was the Marlins and the Rangers, and the score was 8-0. So in that type of scenario, my level would have zeroed out based upon the example that I gave you on the previous episode about having 500 views, which would equate to about $100. So that would equate to about 800 views being zero. So that means at that point, it's almost like a table when you gambling, right? So when you see that Z at that point, anybody that's up under that bar loses all their money. It doesn't matter which team you're betting on. Whatever monies you have down on the table or monetization or views, you lose at that point when you see your number, up under a certain bar. Just period. Even if it's even relevant, even if you're playing with thousands, because it's different levels to it. So when you're playing with thousands, it's the same thing. If you see you playing with 8,000 and you see 8-0, that means 8,000 is nothing. It's zero. You lost all your money. And I'm using that for an example because this is something that a lot of people can do, believe it or not, and they're betting on you in the stock market and things of that nature based upon these scores. But the thing is, and here's the secret, and this will lead us into part 3. I'm not going to say too much about it, but this is how they're doing it with you. It's based on something real simple, and it's called an identification card. You have an ID, and in that ID, they're not going to tell you this, but you're actually funding an insurance company based upon your movements and actions and things that you do. So when you see that score, I know that I'm kind of jumping around, but it's all going to make sense at the end. I'm going to try to make a lecture every so many hours about this. But when you see that score 8-0, and you know you got an ID, that 0 represents free money to them. That means all the money that was on the table, someone gets to what? Collect that, because you lost it, supposedly, if you don't move. See, that's the secret. You have to move into a locale and a location where you can actually collect on that credit. You have to know where the money went when it goes into a 0 account. Doesn't mean that it's no money. It just means somebody collected on it. And it's 0. And I'm saying this because a lot of people have YouTube channels sitting up their reviews and don't even know how to use it. They don't even know how to make any money off of it. They could be doing this, but they don't know how to. And then if they find out what to do, it may be kind of strenuous, expensive, because you're going to have to let go of your ID. I mean, you can't do this with ID. You can't. I'm really deep into this movement. I mean, it's a lot of stuff I could talk about based upon this. But the states are going to become invalid. That's all I'm going to say. So you can't really do this with an ID, and you can't build wealth without ID. And this is going to move into the new currency. So pretty interesting experience. So what happened is that I'll just go ahead and shut down my example. So I went on ahead and claimed, because I was betting on the Marlins. So when they went into 0, I just refinanced, essentially is what I did, into the Rangers. I refinanced into the Rangers because what happens is that when you go 0, they have a right to collect on all of your commodities. They call it fortunes of commodities. So any commodities that's up under judgment at that time, you go into 0, they have a right to trade on, not collect on them, but trade on them until the next hand. So what I did is that I just went ahead and paid it off, you know, of course, through accepting it for value based upon me having property in Texas. See, this is where it gets tricky, you know what I'm saying? You can't accept stuff for value if you don't have some type of intellectual property or something like that in that locale or that region. So what I did was that I had property there, so I accepted it for value because essentially it was a tax, is what it is, because the Texas Rangers, see, this is going into the metaphysics of it. They represent taxes. This is a tax. The Marlins represent insurance companies that were owned by people from 200 and 300 years ago, old insurance companies with old money that a lot of people use to trade off of and things of that nature. So the Rangers tax that, meaning that they're not making any money. They're not making enough money right now off of those old insurance policies out of Florida and things of that nature for whatever reason. So the Rangers accepted those funds for value. It's free money. See, they don't tell you what's going on in sports. They won some free money, accepted it for value, and they're using it and trading off of it in the name of the IRS. There's about 7 different IRSs. They're all separate, right? And when they have these games, they compete and take each other's resources. So in the name of the IRS, yeah, they just claim some responsibility, claim some resources, and you know what I'm saying, something as small as that may have been like $100 or $800 to you. If you knew what you was doing, you could have turned that into like yesterday I made in monetization, I turned that into like $6,000. That financial instance that I just spoke of, I turned that into $6,000 in one day based upon this method in credit though. So now what I have to do is I have to sell this credit to try to get capital. So that's when I ask for donations and things of that nature. I'm looking at it as if I'm selling credit for money, fiat notes, because that's what I do, to trade in and out. So I'm bringing all of this up because this is the metaphysics and the secrets that they don't tell you that goes on in the sports arena that's worth millions of dollars, that you could be making, if not billions of dollars at some point once this new currency comes out. Once you break the spell and get out of this routine of thinking that you got to go back and forth to work every day and that's your only way. It's just that you don't know how to trade. You don't know about banks. You don't know about how they use banks as holding companies to hold your resources. You don't know how you can monetize and increase your social security number, the points on it, and make it go up higher. See, when you monetize, you got to start working with the first 3 digits of your social. I'll go into that at another time. So this is all relevant upon the sports scores, but what's going to happen is that as long as you don't lose any money, or if you keep refinancing until a 1 drops, I'll close with this. Until a 1 drops, you still got money cycling around in there. Until they drop a 1, so it's up to you to count. Until you see the next 1 to 0, you keep track of how many days you've had money in that account. And once you get to 11 days, you're now entitled to a check. And we'll talk about that on episode 3. Have a good day. Stay vigilant.